So, let's talk about the South Indian Railway. Now, this isn't just a story about cool steam engines and laying down miles of track. Nope, it's really a story about economics, about empire, and about a piece of technology that completely changed India. But, as we'll see, it came with a pretty hefty and hidden price tag. Let's get into it.
Okay, so picture this. You're an official with the British East India Company back in the 1830s. The mills in Manchester are screaming for raw cotton, and you've got this massive shipment making its way from deep inside the country. But it's late. Not just a little late, weeks late. And when the carts finally arrive in Madras, the cotton is just a disaster. A soggy, brown, completely worthless mess. For the British Empire, this wasn't just a bad day at the office, this was a serious crisis.
And you know, that one ruined shipment, it wasn't just bad luck. It was a sign of a much bigger problem. A problem that was basically putting a chokehold on Britain's commercial dreams for India.
I mean, just look at how difficult things were. We're not talking about your average bumpy road here. The so-called roads were basically just mud tracks. And when the monsoons hit, forget about it. They turned into sludge, cutting off entire cities. A trip from Madurai to Madras by bullock cart could take more than 2 weeks, and that's if everything went right. And get this, the cost of just moving the cotton could be an eighth of its total value. And on top of all that, you had to constantly worry about bandits. It was an absolute nightmare. So, it was pretty obvious that bullock carts and muddy roads weren't going to cut it if you wanted to run an empire. The British needed something better, something faster and way more reliable. And that solution, which was really a technological miracle for its time, was on its way from England.
What's wild is just how fast this technology moved. In 1830, the world's very first steam railway for the public opens in England. And just 5 years later, only 5, they're already building a test line in Madras. That incredible speed tells you everything you need to know about how critically important this project was to the British.
So why was the railway such a game changer? Well, it really just comes down to basic physics. Trying to drag a heavy cart through mud takes a ton of energy. But rolling a smooth steel wheel on a smooth steel rail, it's just incredibly efficient. In fact, it takes only about a fifth of the energy. That simple fact is what made the railway the most powerful transportation system in the world.
Now, this very first railway line wasn't for moving people or even cotton. It was a small, practical experiment. Its whole job was to haul granite for building projects in Madras. It was powered by this rotary steam engine they brought over from England, and when it actually moved without any horses or bullocks pulling it, it proved that, hey, this thing could actually work here. But it was still way too small to get the big money investors interested in building a whole network.
And that is where Governor General Lord Dalhousie enters the picture. He shows up in 1848 and immediately gets it. He wasn't just thinking about moving a few rocks. He saw this vision of a huge network of iron arteries, all designed to pump the resources from India's heartland straight to the industrial engine of Britain. His plan was, for all intents and purposes, a perfectly engineered colonial pipeline. And the railway was the missing piece. It would link the farms far inland directly to the port cities. From the ports, ships would whisk the raw cotton off to England. There, it would be turned into textiles in the factories, and then those finished goods would be sold back to the world, including right back to India. So, with this master plan ready to go, construction began on the first major line in the region, connecting Madras to Arcot. And its launch, well, it was a massive public spectacle.
But first, they needed an engine, and they got one. It was an absolute monster, weighing in at 13 tons. This incredible piece of British engineering had to be shipped all the way from England.
You know, just getting a 13-ton machine from a ship to the shore was a huge deal. They had to tie boats together to make a floating platform with a crane on it. The whole thing was such a massive operation that the government actually declared a public holiday. They say pretty much the entire city of Madras turned out to watch this iron horse arrive.
And then came the big day, July 1st, 1856. The first official train ride was a huge production. It pulled out of the station with a 21-gun salute, carrying 300 European passengers. When they got to their destination, the Nawab of Arcot threw a giant dinner party for them. It's also really important to note that a second, shorter train ran later for Indian passengers, but it didn't even go the full distance. So right from day one, you could see a clear hierarchy built into the system.
So what was the result of all this? Well, the change was just mind-blowing. A journey that used to take almost an entire day could now be done in just an hour and a half. The impact wasn't just big, it was instant.
It literally changed people's relationship with time and distance.
It all sounds amazing, right? A total success story, a triumph of modern engineering. But all this progress didn't come for free. And that leads to the really important question, who was actually footing the bill?
To answer that, we have to look past the parades and the dinner parties and really dig into the very clever and pretty controversial financial system that made this whole thing happen.
Okay, let's break this down. British investors were a little nervous about sinking their money into India. They saw it as a bit of a gamble. So to sweeten the deal, the government came up with this thing called the Guaranteed Interest Scheme. Here's how it worked. Private investors in Britain would provide the money to build the railways. In exchange, the government guaranteed them a 5% return on their investment every single year. But here's the kicker. That guarantee was paid for by the government of India, using money from Indian taxpayers. And the deal was even better than that. If a railway line was a total flop, the government promised to buy it back from the investors at full price, again with Indian tax money.
So really, when you boil it all down, it was a heads-I-win, tails-you-lose situation for the British investors. They got all the potential profit if the railway did well, and absolutely none of the risk if it failed. That risk was placed entirely on the Indian public.
Now, there's no question the railway was a powerful force for change. It connected a massive subcontinent, it boosted trade, and it really did lay the tracks for modern India. But it was all built on a financial system designed to protect outside investors while putting the burden on the local population. So it leaves us with this really complex question to think about. The Iron Horse brought incredible change, but what was the true price of the ticket?